Hi, everybody, and welcome to Expat Hub and Rock Your Reentry. We would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Doreen Cumberford, and my husband is John Palmer. We have about 65 years experience in the expatriate lane, and we have, between the two of us, lived, worked, served, and done government work in about 7 or 8 or 9 different countries. So we're glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming. Today I'm going to give you everything I've got. This is going to be an overview of rocking your reentry and really moving back into what you may call your native country, your passport country, the country you were born, or perhaps you're going somewhere completely new, but it is going back somewhere. So we just want to say thank you for coming. We're going to do our best to deliver as much as we can in a short period of time. So I'd like to invite you to stay focused. If you will take this time and bring yourself to the present to see what you can get, and be aware, create a high intention today, and be aware of maybe some ways to think or some tricks or some tips that will make a difference in the big grand move that you are making, have made, or are about to make. Get engaged. Turn off all your other electronic devices. Put down your screens, because we don't want you to miss anything, and we have deeply prepared, hopefully, a webinar that will be useful here. So if you have some comments, if you have any interaction, you can tell me a little bit about where you're from in the chat. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, play full out. Because this is a webinar that is being recorded and sent to you, we would love to know, we'd love to have your feedback. We'd love to hear from you with questions and answers, because you probably know a lot of the answers to the challenges that you know you're aware of and about to face in this situation. We're going to be sending you the Expat Toolkit. Now, the Expat Toolkit is just a basket of ideas. It is simply created to give you some ideas about how you can be victorious in that process called reentry. How you can develop courage is one of the things there, and how you can use courage to push through sometimes that might be more challenging than you had anticipated. So we're going to be sending this to you. We invite you to use it. We invite you just to look at one thing every day. Take one idea and apply it and see what difference it makes. So let's look at the big idea. The big idea, or the big situation here, is that you have lived overseas, or you are living overseas. And you are either about to return home, or you already have returned home. You have experienced the expatriate life. You have lived in a different country and been exposed to so many different perspectives. And we want to help you through that process of moving back. So in the process of moving from being an expat to being repatriated in your home country, there are some definite, clear phases which have been identified and scientifically studied over the last 30 to 40 years. Many people have the experience of feeling disconnected. They feel they feel discombobulated. They feel separate from their tribe. They feel separate from their families, their loved ones, their support system. It's very common. Today, we plan on taking you from that feeling of disconnection to really dancing your unique dance. What is the what are the situations, the circumstances, and the way you would love your new life to be. And we're going to help you work through those today. We're also going to help you move from suffering to summoning. Because in the repatriation experience, there are both ends, sometimes on the same day. And so our plan is to deliver some strategies, systems, maybe even some thoughts about how to summit, how to win at this game, how to hit your peak and know that you are deeply rooted, very settled, and happy. So let's look at the expatriate life. We have had people on the webinar from France, Europe, Holland, Germany, Thailand, China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, England, Ireland, New Zealand, Australia, all over the world. And you have enjoyed a fabulous, hopefully a fabulous experience overseas that has led you to live an expanded life of joy and culture and multiculturalism with different languages, different food, different geographic experiences, perhaps a lot of travel, and perhaps a lot of choices and decisions in the process. And then when you come back, what happens is we become citizens of the globe. So when we're citizens of the globe, we develop this kind of different mindset that when we seek to fit ourselves back into our old countries, it's like trying to put ourselves back into the puzzle, but we don't fit that puzzle anymore. So going from a world citizen to a citizen of where the heck am I is a very odd experience. And there is a sense of where am I? The first time I came to America, I moved to America not to become an immigrant, but I came as an expat for a few years in the early 80s. And that was one of the most challenging culture shocks I have ever anticipated. It was not as I had imagined. The culture, the country, the people, the situation, the language, everything was completely different. And being an English-speaking person growing up in Scotland, I thought it would be very similar. Not so. So many of us have come from exotic lands, and I'm using this as an example because I know there may be some people on here that are actually moving back from the Middle East. And the Middle East and the Far East are some of the most exotic, beautiful places in the world where life is quite culturally different, where geography, topography, and the environment plays such a huge role in your life. And you're about to move back to something that looks quite different. And so you're moving perhaps from an exotic land back to suburbia, city life, downtown, country living. It could be anywhere. But no matter where, there will be boring details that you have to take care of. I think sometimes we're under the illusion that when we're overseas, all of the bureaucracy is a pain in the neck, and that when we move home, it will all disappear. Well, I'm here to tell you that's really not the case. And I think there's just as much bureaucracy, multiculturalism, and change, and perspective-busting principles that have to be learned and studied in every culture. So the boring details can be a bit challenging. So let's pull the curtain back a bit here. It's really like pulling the wallpaper off of your life. If you consider your wall, you're looking at a wall that is your life, you're pulling the wallpaper off of that life to create something completely new. quite often there's loss and grief. Let's look at the problems. The loss and the grief. There's loss of family. There's loss of people that became family. There's loss of people that were your bestest friends that you fell in love with, and they substituted for your family. There's a lot of grief involved, even just in missing the place. I sometimes wake up in the morning with a sense of, where am I? And as I look out my window, I was looking at yellow trees and yellow leaves. Well, we never had yellow leaves like that for 15 years when I was in Saudi Arabia. So even having been back for over 5 years now, it can be quite a shock to the system that you occasionally have those pangs of, oh, I miss that. It's a little bit of loss and grief. 71% of people that we studied last year in a survey we did said they really miss their friends. Their friends had become like family. Your friends are there for you. They support you. They love you through all sorts of circumstances. They tolerate you. Because maybe in the expat community, if you were deeply connected to an expat community, then those friends were your support system. Not true for all expats in all circumstances, but most of them miss their friends tremendously. Your tribe. There also is a sense for many people of who am I and who am I becoming. If you are a fellow who has been in a career for so many years, and suddenly you're shifting to an old country that you think you're familiar with, but you're going to become a different kind of a citizen with different priorities, different thinking, and different possibilities. It's a big shift. And imagining, who are you and who am I going to become? It's one of the theme songs for Rock Your Reentry is, we believe that you can become the person you would love to become in this process. Anxiety and stress. Oh boy. Well, moving alone is stressful. But then moving and settling in can be very stressful for people. We have, there's 7,000 people on one Facebook page alone who are what we call triangles. And if you are a triangle, that is, you have grown up in a country which is a square, and you move to a country that is a round, you don't become a round. If you were in Saudi Arabia for 20 years, you didn't become a Saudi. You became something else, a different kind of person called a triangle. And there are many of us out there who experience this kind of low-level anxiety and stress from moving around so much throughout our lives. 23% of people said they were homesick. Now, they're homesick for many things. I think we can be homesick for the country that we left in the first place. Now, I actually left America. I was an expatriate living in America. I left America, moved to Japan, then Saudi Arabia, and came back to America as a quote-unquote hidden immigrant. Because I'm not obviously an immigrant, and I'm not a refugee. And I can tell you that the America that I left was not the America we returned to 20 years later. During that time, the internet had arrived. Cell phones showed up. Communicating like this on a screen became the norm. It was just amazing, the change in this country. And it was staggering to see how different it was, and who were we going to become in order to create the life we wanted to create back in America, to overcome and get beyond the homesickness. And even now, I know there are people who have lived overseas for many years who still long occasionally for something back home in the host country. Very common. 38% of people feel overwhelmed. Now, they can be overwhelmed by the new culture. They can be overwhelmed by the details, the moving, buying new houses, buying 2 cars, getting the kids put in school, getting a new career, finding a new job, how to navigate technology, how to keep yourself motivated, moving forward, experiencing the sense of progress and forward momentum in your life, and not letting the millions of details get to you. That's something to master, isn't it? Also, no matter how financially well off or wealthy or well invested and funded people were in the survey, we discovered that 21% of them were still uncertain financially. They were a little unclear about values for money. If you've been dealing in dirhams or yen or reals or francs or pounds, and suddenly you move back to a dollar or you move back to pounds, it's quite interesting because there is a system of value. And sometimes we lose our values or we misplace our values. Our values actually become a bit changed when we move overseas. So when you move home, it's quite normal to feel 21% of people say they're financially uncertain. So moving from the home country, and in this case, it was the UK, overseas, coming back, preparing to come back there to your new country, to your home country, is quite the process. It is a process that has been documented, that has been studied, and there are white papers at the wazoo about multiculturalism and this globalization and global lifestyle. Right now, there's 220 million people who are living in a country that is not of their home birth, that is not their native country. Now, we'd like you to chip in and just let us know if any of this feels familiar to you. Great. So let's move on. Our story is, I grew up in Glasgow, and then I was moved down to England to live in London by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office because I worked for the Foreign Office. And I was in my 20s. It was my first, quote, overseas posting. Although England and Scotland are hardly considered overseas, but it was quite a culture shock. Thereafter, I moved to Cameroon, West Africa, where I worked in an embassy for a couple of years, then back to London, and then I bounced to Dubai. Finally, after Dubai, I went to America. So these are just a few of the countries I've lived in. My husband, he lived as a child in Japan and as a young man in Germany, and as a midlife executive into his senior years, he lived in Japan and Saudi Arabia. So we have bounced around all of these different locations. And even noticing the difference in multiculturalism in America is absolutely fascinating. So we moved from the big city of Yokohama, which had 12 or 13 million people, including Tokyo. And that was a very shocking culture shock to move to a tiny company town called Ras Tanura. Ras Tanura is on the banks of the beautiful Arabian Gulf, right across the Straits of Hormuz and Iran. And it is a beautiful, quintessential oil company town with the most harmonious, gorgeous aesthetics. We spent the next 15 years in the Camel Lane. That's what I call Saudi Arabia, and in the Middle East. And upon reflection, it was one of the times that really generated a lot of personal growth, a lot of joy, and a lot of growing up for me. And looking back on it now, it was one of the best Olympic achievements of my life, was not only surviving it, thriving it, but rocking it on the reentry and looking into what did I learn? What was the purpose there? And that was a great experience. But when you come back, no matter how prepared you are, emotionally, mentally, you know it's going to be a challenge. What do you have to think about? Now what? And often we feel like we're just sort of sidelined, like sitting on a bench going, okay, where's life? Where did life go? And life to you might be flying off on the next airplane to go somewhere. But all of a sudden, you don't have anywhere to fly to. You don't have any reason to go anywhere except that you would love to. But you don't necessarily have a clue what your purpose is, what your dream is, and what your vision is for the next part of life. So having a turning point, I think many of us have had lots of turning points, but sitting down and reflecting, most people who have returned, there is a turning point where they feel, oh yeah, that was when I really clearly made a decision to start the next adventure. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Our transition included moving from Bellingham, Washington to Houston, to finally being rooted, deeply settled, and delightfully happy, surprisingly, in the beautiful mile-high city of Denver. So I think we've identified most of the puzzle pieces here, perhaps all of the puzzle pieces. When you get to move, what a great experience. You get to actually have a fresh start. You get to start all over again. And we recommend there's ways and processes, and there's lots of tools and strategies you can use to identify your puzzle pieces and put them together. So let's zoom out. Really, you're moving towards reinventing yourself. No matter who you've been in the past, what decisions you've made up till now, this is a new platform from which you can recreate yourself. And so we help you with moving from reminiscing, looking back over your shoulder, to the recreation of something wonderful in the future. Organized thinking. That addresses the chaos and the overwhelm and some of the anxiety and the stress that is part of the process in relocating back to your native culture. And creative action. This is one of the ways that you can really create what you would love and start to energize yourself, start to become juicy and look at possibilities and move yourself from living in the potential of what could you do into what's possible, and then ultimately into what's probable, and just doing it, getting it done. Making your life welcome. So, when we set the table, we make people welcome. One of the gifts of living in the Middle East and also in Japan was the setting of the table and making people welcome. And in fact, on the eastern side of the globe, I always experience this great sense of welcome, this great sense of, you're here, you finally showed up, and these people that we don't even know. For instance, one year when my daughter was very little, we went to Sri Lanka on a vacation. And we were at a hotel visiting, and we stumbled on a wedding party. And this wedding party said, oh, would you please come with us in the boat? And I'm like, okay. And it was a delightful experience. This young couple had just gotten married. They were taking a sail across the bay, and they wanted someone else to witness their vows. And so my daughter, my husband, and I, the minister, and this young couple, they were Hindu, got in this boat, and we got to participate in this fabulous wedding ceremony. They made us welcome. And sometimes when we move back to our native culture, there's a sense that we're not quite so welcome, that perhaps people are not curious, because let's face it, we're pretty normal. We've been gone, we've come back, but let's get on with life now. And that's kind of the attitude. So don't expect the red carpet to be rolled out everywhere you go. Don't expect people to be welcoming you into their tent. It'll happen, but it's not like overseas hospitality. And if you make your life welcome and you make the new people in your life welcome, you will enjoy much more of that. So we're going to give you some strategies to do that today. So essentially, when we moved back, it was about our fifth, between the two of us, we had re-entered our native cultures about 3 times for John and about the same amount for me, depending on how you measure being here as an expatriate and coming back as an immigrant. And we really deeply studied the situations and the ways that we all manage it. And we have lots and hundreds of friends who have been through this process. I came back and dived deeply into a life coaching business. And I had been a coach since 1980. I had coached in the 80s. I had put it on the shelf for a while. I did a little bit of self-improvement training in California for, probably for 8 years. Then in Saudi, I did some training. Also in Japan, I taught some self-development courses. And so when I came back, I thought, I am going to recreate my life all over again. And how do I want it to look? And so this system actually came out of a search for, well, what works when you're actually not just moving, but moving back to your home country. So the first stage of the system is when you're preparing to launch yourself, you're either in your host country getting ready to move, or you're in the process of moving. But you're preparing yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, hopefully, for this journey that you're going to go on. You may feel that you're a bit distracted because there's lots and lots of details to take care of. And you may have arrived home quite overwhelmed and a bit tired because there's so much to think about. You may discover that in the process of this journey, of this liftoff, you get a bit distressed, and especially when you first arrive and you realize that people have changed, the culture has moved on. The memories you had from living, say it was in the US or Australia, if you were to return to either of those 2 countries today, there's a lifetime of difference compared to 20 years ago. So lifting off and moving back can cause some feelings of disillusionment. You can feel disempowered. You can feel disconnected from the culture and a lot of the changes. And that results in a sense of being a bit lost. The next stage is really reevaluating and taking stock of where you are, wondering what's possible. And one of the ways that we've noticed really helps people is when they re-examine your values. What were your values before? What values are you taking with you? And what values do you want to practice in the future in your new country, in your new culture? So finding those values, discovering them, exploring them, painting pictures of what they're going to look like is a real fun and creative process, because you're beginning to wonder. You're beginning to wonder exactly how things will go. And you're more fascinated about the possibility and looking into the future. So you become cautiously optimistic and quite hopeful. The next step of the process is envisioning the life that you would love. Now, envisioning the life that you would love is sort of a phase when you start getting more engaged and involved in creativity. You are, sorry, the disinterested doesn't apply here. You're wholeheartedly into what you're doing. You're building a compelling vision. You're constructing the scaffolding for it. You're creating the blueprint. You might be a bit afraid. You might be a bit nervous or excited. And the only difference between fear and excitement is breath. So you may be a little breathless, but doing it anyway. And the next stage is orbiting. This is where you're actually getting into your groove. You're creating your tribe. You've identified organizations that you would love to play with. You've identified people and situations and goals and achievements that you would like to achieve. You've actually identified new hobbies, new skills, and new loves that you would like to play with. You're enthusiastic and you're inspired and you get great ideas and you're just sort of applying those ideas and at the same time using determination and focus to move the process along. And that's what we call the learning and growing phase, where you're fully committed. Finally, go back. Finally, the last stage is living the vision. This is where you are landed, deeply rooted, you're settled without settling for less. You still feel like you're on an adventure. In fact, what you've done is you've recreated the adventure you had when you were gone. You've actually sat down and worked through this process to recreate the next adventure. You're landing your goals, you're hitting your targets, you're getting results, you're really grateful for the results. You're embodying the adventure you had overseas, you've brought it with you, and you're enjoying the rewards. And you're finally living the next version of an inspired life. Now, we've designed a system to help all of this flow, make sense, and move you forward. And the system is the Dream Builder Roadmap. So in the Rock Your Reentry Roadmap, because we're helping you build a dream here. So the liftoff stage, after you're back and you're feeling really uncomfortable and you're impatient and you can't connect to people and you're really disillusioned and you don't know where to turn, then we help you. This system actually helps you become calm. It helps you discover the gold nuggets that you had in your old country. It helps you pack up the physical, emotional, psychological mindset challenges and the adventurous spirit that you had before and start to move it with you. The next stage is called rumbling. Now, rumbling is a sort of a technology of thinking that goes beyond the debriefing stage. The dreaming and the debriefing stage is the beginning, and the rumbling is where you're going to find your values, tell your stories, and really dig deeper into what are some of the issues. What are the things that are working? What are the things that are not working? And how can you close the gap and engage with these situations in order to get to the next step? Odyssey is where you're actually building, creating, blueprinting, and envisioning the life that you would love. You're getting it on paper, you're talking to people about it, you're researching, you're making choices, you're making decisions in that phase. The following phase is the experimental phase, where you're orbiting your new life, you're getting things in place, you're sort of starting to amplify the things you want. So you're making the things you want more important. You're paying more attention to those details. You're spending your time, your money, your talents, and your energy in amplifying the things you want. And you're beginning to become really committed to your new life and your new adventure. Finally, you have momentum, where you live into your vision and where you feel like you're gathering momentum and everything you're doing is beginning to count. Everything, the person you have been in the past and the life that you have lived is finally merged and blended and holistically beautiful because it's helping you move into your next adventure. So this all happens to spell dream. This one is debriefing. This one will be rumbling, engaging, amplifying, and mastering. And so let's move to the next slide and you can take a look at this. Debriefing. So what the heck is debriefing? Debriefing is something that people go through when they return from the Foreign Office, an overseas assignment, if you've been in the military or intelligence, or in any corporate life where you come back from an extended assignment and are debriefed as to what was the experience like, what were the lessons learned, how would you do it differently next time? So the purpose for debriefing in the Reentry roadmap is really to start to calm your central nervous system. It's to start to make you feel like, oh, so this is not unusual. It may be uncomfortable or unpleasant, but it's not unusual. And so you start to monitor, you start to pay attention to things and get into details about what did you love when you were overseas? What can you bring back that you can use again? And how can you blend that into the next part of your life? The rumbling stage is really creating short, succinct statements about where you are and why you are where you are in your life, and what are the issues you're feeling, and what do you think the challenges are, or where are the challenges that you're going to leave behind you right now. It's helping you start to tell a different story. We rumble with our stories because you have a story about where you've been, if you loved it, if you hated it, how it affected you, how it imprinted you. And the idea here is to help you rumble with that story and say, well, is this really true? How can we get the juice out of the best of you and your talents and bring them with you into the future? So that's where the rumble takes place. The next part is engaging. This is standing outside and dreaming, what would I love? Getting up every day thinking, what would I love of today? If I attained this today, would I be happy? So it's starting to engage and design your daily life, perhaps putting new mindset, new strategies, new thinking in place, or perhaps it's just simply making a plan or finding your favorite food. It's what would you love? The next stage is the amplifying stage. And as I mentioned, the amplifying stage is where you're going to take the things that are working and focus on them. Drop the other stuff, leave it behind, throw it away, discard it, recycle it in some ways. But magnify and amplify and shout from the rooftops and experiment with the things that are working. And finally, mastering. And mastering is when you get really deeply rooted and you are connected to a community and you find people who love and adore you and who will support you in your vision and who will help you create your vision and who will listen to your stories and help you adjust to your new culture. So let's go a little deeper into debriefing. There's several books out there on the subject of returning home. And what we've done in our course is we've taken, I think, the best of many different philosophies and ideas and examples to create a debriefing that is purposeful, to help you figure out what is your purpose now, right now, and how can you blend your old life into your new purpose. What did you learn from your multicultural experience that you can now use as either a platform to grow on, to share and to change, or stories that you can write, even if it's just a legacy for your grandchildren. But debriefing is an opportunity for you to do some writing, do some deep reflecting, take the time to look at your journey and where you've been and how wonderful the lessons are, because you'll be revisiting your story. Though there were some years in Saudi Arabia from approximately 2004 to 2009 where there were with fairly great regularity, there was an event. There was some sort of a terrorist event, or there was something dangerous that was sort of threatening us. This created a level of stress and anxiety in our lives that became background noise in our lives. It's been really helpful for me and others that we've worked with to really talk about those times and record them and look at them and look at the strategies and the behaviors that we used to manage that and to make the best of those ugly times. So revisiting your story, mining for gold nuggets. So not only the belongings you brought with you, but also the personal traits that you adopted. Perhaps there were some characteristics of the local culture that you loved. And so I would recommend that as we go through this process, you mine for the gold nuggets. You're also going to recraft and reshape your story. Now, in our family, I guess we've spent maybe less than 20 minutes over the last 5 years since we've been home discussing and reflecting on what did we learn in Saudi Arabia with our family. People are busy. They also haven't had your experience. So when you start rambling at them with your story and making it long and complex, they don't get it. They really don't connect with it. However, if you shape your story, give some thought to it, and drip it into the conversation with some meaningful lessons all the way along, it makes a huge difference in helping you re-edit your story. So let's edit out the past, because it is the past, in order that you can recreate the new book in your life. And if you imagine it as being a book, and on the left-hand side is your past, and every page is written on, and yet the right-hand side is just a series of blank pages, then what will you apply to those blank pages? What will you write in them? What are you going to create? And that's really fun. Now, mastering. Mastering is at the end of the process. Debriefing is at the beginning. Mastering is the conclusion of the Rocky Reentry roadmap system. And when we master something, it means you've been out there practicing it. You've been experimenting. You've been discovering, that didn't go well. That did go well. I love this group. No, I don't think I'll go back to that group. This looks like my tribe. No, they're not my tribe. So you will be monitoring a process for the next. Some people, it takes them a couple of years to navigate this. Some people navigate it all done in 6 months. But mostly, it's a process. And we invite you to really lend yourself to the process in order that you can make your unique difference in the world. What is it that you uniquely are here to do? And what is it that you can uniquely do as a result of your past experience overseas, whether it was Europe, Asia, Japan? One of the things I learned living in Japan was my love of ikebana, of beautiful, simplistic flowers, of clean spaces. And I have a collection of ikebana containers all kinds of adventures to get those containers in downtown Tokyo. Many, many fun stories. And you know, it is such a gift to be able to practice that art and to, throughout the year, use ikebana in different parts of my home. So that's one of the ways that I can make a unique difference now in my life as a result of living somewhere 20-something years ago. It's been 22 years since I was in Japan. So making your unique difference, and it can mean going out and becoming a volunteer, getting involved in interfaith, all of the above, ultimately leading you to a sense of well-being, a sense of resolution, a sense of being deeply grounded and rooted right where you are, and also a sense of well-being and completion, and then celebration. So we get to celebrate. You know, part of the process in anything is to celebrate along the way. I have a friend who speaks on the subject of celebration, and he has done research upon research on American culture in corporate land, and discovered that if we will celebrate the small steps, then we start to take bigger and better and steps, because the celebration sort of puts a seal on it. It's like, we did it. Yes. So we celebrate. So what did you discover from this? Anyone is invited to put that in the chat. Sorry about this. Just take a moment to think about anything that rings true to you, something that perhaps you were not anticipating that now you will pay attention to. Or perhaps, what is the next thing? Here we go from suffering, feeling like you're in a box and very bored and dealing with sundry details, from missing your friends, feeling very isolated, moving you to contentment. And that's what this journey does. From lost identity and feeling like, who the heck am I, to having a sense of coherence and being confident. From anxiety and stress and feeling very, very overwhelmed by that, to feeling carefree and happy and joy and reclaiming that again. Oh, sorry. From homesick and unsettled and missing the environment, your old home, perhaps an old car you had, perhaps your best friend or your neighbors next door, and missing that, to feeling deeply rooted in a new home, very settled, very grounded. This takes you from feeling overwhelmed and feeling like you're in the midst of a tsunami of emotion, to getting your thoughts organized, your process organized, and marching your way through this birth canal, as it were, to your new adventure. Taking you from feeling a bit financially uncertain to an experience of being grateful and very generous. And gratitude is what grounds the good in our life for the next part to show up. And ultimately living the dream. What is the dream you would love to be living? So the Rock Your Reentry Roadmap takes you through debriefing, the rumbling stage, through to the engaging, the acting, and the mastering. Now here we have a couple of case studies. There's a couple of friends that we did some self-development work with a number of years ago, and they had a really fascinating journey when they sought to go back to New Zealand, and their re-entry actually involved a side trip. It was what I would call the after party. And the after party was, I think, 2 or 3 years in Malaysia teaching English. It wasn't planned. It wasn't organized. They never anticipated this. But this was one of the greatest delights and wonders of their life. And now, David and Gaynor, I'm happy to say, are deeply rooted in New Zealand. Alex and Lindsay, they were young college kids who wanted to go on an adventure and apply these principles one day at a time. Currently are in London and possibly moving on to another location in Europe. So it does take a bit of getting it done type of atmosphere. It does take moving into that winning experience. So you have to know what to do. You have to know how to do it. And then ultimately you have to get this done. So our mission is really to inspire, lead, and coach returning expats during their transition to their next home and to their new adventure. Ultimately, our goal is to help you settle without settling for any less than the life you lived before. We love to help people transform from moving very slowly in that very old-fashioned spacecraft, which has less technology than an iPhone now, to where you are able to manage, experiment, and create almost a sense of navigating your life with ease. Taking you to summiting the mountain called repatriation and winning against any depression, loss, grief, financial uncertainty, or overwhelm that you may be experiencing. Taking you to this, where you find your tribe, where you have contentment, where you're coherent. Oops, I'm sorry. Am I going home? To home, to being deeply organized, and ultimately grateful and generous. Now, 10% of people are not going to do anything. We get that. And 30% of us do our best to do it ourselves until we realize that, hey, maybe we need help to get this done. And then ultimately, 60% of us win and are settled, and we do it with some support and assistance and some mentoring. So the Rock Your Reentry 6-month Voyager program provides exactly that. It provides mentorship. It provides mentorship from not just ourselves, but other people who have been through this and who have contributed their wisdom, their knowledge, their love, and their support to creating this system. It also supplies accountability so that you don't go out and try a few things and then give up after a week or two, because it's constantly monitoring exactly how are you doing with this process. Are you rocking it? Are you winning in the process of relocating? It offers peer support in the form of a monthly mastermind group where we all get on the phone together and share each other's journeys and wins and celebrations and cheering each other on as we take the steps and take the action to move forward. And ultimately, it requires a system. You can't just arrive back and think, this is going to be magic. It takes systems, support, and some thought to work through the process and have it be functional. So what we do in the Rock Your Reentry mentorship program, we offer 2 coaching calls a month. And that means you get on the call one-to-one with us and talk about, so what's up? What is the progress? What have you learned? What have you achieved? And what is your dream and your goal for the next part? And what are you willing to do? And what are you not willing to do? And how are you feeling about this process? And we help you rock it, 1 call at a time, twice a month, together with a monthly masterminding group, which is all on the phone. People are all over the globe sharing and supporting each other. And that's a great way to get new ideas. A personal debriefing where you're on the phone with us for an hour to start with, and also email support, plus occasional 911 calls. If something's really going wrong, then we welcome you to call us. We want to be here. Our mission is to serve and support you in having this journey be easier for you than it was for us, and that it is for a lot of others currently. The accountability is the place where we help you just to be responsible, to show up and get the work done. The peer partners are there to cheer you on and to lead you and give you ideas and feedback. And the system is the thinking processes and the structures and the exercises and the behaviors that are necessary to absolutely triumph in this experience. So you have two choices. We always have a choice. Do nothing. Risk nothing. 100% risk-free. Nothing's going to change. Just muddle your way through. You can do that. Or you can take a leap of faith and bet on yourself and seek to do something to change your results. And what do you get? You get a 6-month Voyager program, and as I've already covered, the telephone coaching, the masterminding group, and the 60-minute initial consultation. The 60-minute debrief actually is the beginning of the debriefing process, which really is a month long, and there are handouts and backup support for all of these. The bi-weekly phone Skype calls is where we're really helping you think into what would you love to do and accomplish in the next 2 weeks? What's doable? What are the hurdles that you're facing? Are there any hurdles? And if there are, how can we help you surmount them? 911 calls, that is if you are just in breakdown and don't feel like you're getting the breakthrough you want in this process called reentry. You're welcome to pick up the phone and call us. That's what we will be there for. You start with a 1-hour customized session, and that is starting to dial in. What are your dreams? What is your purpose? And what are your values? Here's the monthly mastermind conference calls when we're on the phone from all over the globe to share and to have other eyes be on the project. Now, if you have any questions, we would invite you to send them to us or to write to us or fill in the chat here. Now, what if you could, if the only thing you did was resolve your grief, would it be worth participating in this program called the Voyager program? If all it did was create more connections quicker and easier and faster with your friends and family, would it be worth it? If all you did was reduce your overwhelm, would that be worth it? If all I did was recraft and recreate the person I would love to be and the adventure you would love to have in the process, would that be worth it? We would this is in August, but we would love to schedule a strategy session with you. Now, you are welcome to connect with us at this email address down here, johnpalmer.eesi@gmail.com and doreen@doreenmcumberford.com. And we have time available on our calendar the last week in September and the first week in October. We have, I think, a day scheduled. And we would invite you to call us, contact us, have a conversation. Let us help you figure out where you are in this plan and maybe some of the obstacles you're facing and help you start hurdling them. If you sign up for and you come on board with us, you would be absolutely certain that there's a 1-month money-back guarantee for everything that we do. So you can be in the program for a month, make sure that this is a good fit for you, that you are moving forward and you're taking the steps, and that this is a good decision. So as I said at the beginning, the science of returning home is both an art and a science. It involves low points and high points all along the way. And our mission is to help you smooth that out. Here's to success, no matter where you land, no matter your circumstances. You have the beginnings of a new adventure already built in. And we welcome you to reach out, call us, email us, and get in touch just to have a conversation to see if there's any common ground that we can support you on. It's been my pleasure to talk to you, and we hope that you are rocking your reentry.